It is so much misinformation, garbage, and just stuff that's not true when it comes to index funds, how they work, and if they're the proper investment for you. So I'm going to cut through all that crap today, and we're going to go step by step on what's the index fund. Are they better than the market? What's the pros of the index fund? What's the cons of index fund? And most importantly, is an index fund the best investment for you? Before we get started, as always, like, subscribe, and share to our channel. In real life, I'm a certified financial planner. We're blessed to help thousands of people nationwide, but on these social media airways, we're just giving information, and prayerfully this information is here to help you grow. You ready? Let go.
And you just wanna get paid, tired of making the money mistakes. Make a payment on your bills and you still late, yeah. Painful profits to help you seek change, and you just wanna get paid, yeah. Tired of making the money mistakes. Make a payment on your bills and you still late, painful profits to help you seek change, yeah. Cut the show and just listen. You wanna feel empowered by making money decisions. Residual by the hours can get you a better living. Been check to check, you knowing it could be different.
So first off, what's an index fund? An index fund is a type of mutual fund or exchange traded fund that buys a basket of investments to match the performance of a specific market like the S&P 500. So the S&P 500, it is the top 500 stocks in one investment. Now, with index funds, you can either do mutual funds or ETFs. Mutual funds are so old school. Mutual funds were popular in the 80s and 90s as investment companies wanted to find a way to give people diversification and also to get commissions. When I started as a financial advisor in 2007 at Edward Jones, it was mutual funds, and the mutual fund upfront commission was 5.5%, meaning for every $100,000, you was charged $5,500. Us financial advisors, needless to say, we love those mutual funds. But as time went on, then competition started. And then you had ETFs, which are called exchange traded funds. Think of an ETF as the same as a mutual fund, but it's sold directly on the stock market. So it's more transparency. And with that transparency, no commissions and a lot less fees. So you usually don't see people doing mutual funds anymore. And for my clients, if they have the opportunity, we like to do ETFs because exchange traded funds are an inexpensive way to invest in the index. Now, typically, when it comes to exchange traded funds, they are what you call benchmarked, okay? Now, the easiest thing to think about with a benchmark is a mirror. Like Michael Jackson, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. So ETF companies like iShares, like BlackRock, like State Street, like Vanguard, they basically say this index or these 500 different companies in the S&P 500, let's create our own fund and call it an exchange traded fund. So they put all 500 of those companies in that one investment. Hence a index fund, because it's a fund of the top 5 companies in the S&P. Now, you can have the NASDAQ, right? So symbol QQQ is by far the most famous index fund tied to the NASDAQ. It's tied to the NASDAQ 100, right? The top 100 companies in the quote unquote NASDAQ. So some key factors when it comes to an index fund. Number one, they're typically low in fees. The expenses stay very low because the funds are passively managed. Now, it's a difference between a passively managed investment, which is like an index fund, and an actively managed investment. And the difference between passively and actively can be the difference of hidden fees that you don't see. You see a passively managed investment or a index fund, they just pick the top 500 companies. If it's the S&P 500, they just pick the top 100 companies that are the NASDAQ. And then every quarter, they just rebalance, okay? So let's say the S&P 500 is made up of NVIDIA, and NVIDIA takes up 15% of that. Well, it's going to stay 15% for a few months. And then every quarterly, they rebalance it, as some investments go up or some investments go down, right? We're seeing this right now with QQQ, when it comes to Micron and some of those AI chip memory companies, right? Micron has went up like crazy this year. So now Micron has a heavier amount in its index fund that's tied to QQQ. So every 3 months, they just rebalance it. So since it's not actively being traded, it's not a lot of buys and sells going on, the expenses are pretty low. When it comes to an active ETF, in the active ETF, not a recommendation, you can look at something like Granny Shots, symbol GRNY. With Granny Shots, what they do is that they take the top 100 companies in the NASDAQ, and then they also take the 500 companies in the S&P 500. And they look forward. They look to see if it's undervalued, what's its PE ratio, what momentum, and those different factors. They then cut that down from the top 500 in the S&P, the top 100 from the NASDAQ, and then just give you the top 30. So since that's actively being managed, where buys and sells are happening throughout the month, then that's going to cost more money because the mutual fund company is doing work. And of course, they're going to pass that expense down to you. So index funds are low in expenses because they are passively managed. They're not actively managed like an active ETF. Less maintenance as well. So number 2, one of the benefits, less maintenance, right? You need to do no research when it comes to the individual stocks. And you don't need to monitor anything because it is passive. They're not buying stocks. They're not selling stocks. They're just looking at the index, right? They're not looking at all 500 companies. They just put it in there. They're not doing buys and sales in the NASDAQ. It's just in there. Or even IWM, which is the Russell 2000, is not movement going on. So you don't have to pick the winners and losers. They pick the winners and losers and put them all into one fund, and whoever wins, wins. Number 3, another huge benefit is this tax efficiency. And this is another reason why mutual funds are like dinosaurs and you don't even see them anymore. Even when it comes to 401ks, like companies like Fidelity, companies like Vanguard, who make more money with mutual funds because of customers complaining and wanting more tax efficiency and lower fees, even those mutual fund companies, because Fidelity, they're a mutual fund company. Vanguard, they're a mutual fund company. Now inside of their 401ks, they're doing more ETFs like VOO, for instance, or VTI, because they're tax efficient. Less buying and selling inside the actual fund means less capital gains. So it's like a buy and hold, right? So if they're only making changes here or there, then there's going to be less sales that's happening. And if it's less sales, it means less capital gains. And the capital gain is what you made minus what you bought. So if I bought a stock for $100, it gets sold for $150. That $50 difference is a capital gain. So that, my friends, is why mutual funds are dinosaurs, because in ETFs, especially passive ETFs, which are index ETFs, not a lot of movement, which means not a lot of taxes. Now, that's one part. Let's go to the second part, which is performance, right? Yes, it's good to know how they're constructed, what they're made of, the fees, but let's be honest. You don't care about that. You care about the performance. That's why we invest, so that we can prayerfully grow, have our money grow and outperform the market. So is it best to pick a stock, or is it best to pick an index fund? Where the Oracle of Omaha, the Wizard of Wall Street, Warren Buffett, says that index funds always will outperform a single stock. And for retail investors, the everyday people like me and you, just go ahead and get an index fund. And he's kind of right about that, right? Approximately 33%, which is 1/3 of all individual stocks in the S&P 500, has outperformed the index over the past 10 years. Meaning, you have a 67% chance of doing better than all the stocks by being in that index fund compared to buying a single stock and doing better. Now, yes, we have some good years with stocks, some great years with stocks, but on average, though, the index outperforms a single stock. Now, people, yes, do day trading, they do swing trading, but let's be honest. Do you have time for that? Probably not. And number two, 91% of day traders lose money. So you're already going into an investment with a 91% chance fail rate. So the reason why we in our practice have the majority of our clients in a large amount of index funds, because we know that we have the strongest chance to beat the market. Now, past performance does not guarantee future results, but the numbers are the numbers. Because the S&P 500 per se is market cap weighted. So we say market cap weighted, it means that whoever is the largest company, they're going to be weighted way more. Let's look at two companies that's in the S&P 500 right now, NVIDIA and Domino's Pizza. They're both in the S&P 500, but since they're market weighted, that means that NVIDIA is going to be having way more growth if it goes up and a lot more shares compared to Domino's Pizza. So Domino's Pizza is 0.2% weighted when NVIDIA is 7.27% weighted, which means if I got $100,000, $7,200 of my $100,000 is going to be invested in NVIDIA compared to only $200 that's going to be invested in Domino's Pizza. So since it's market cap weighed, if Domino's Pizza has a phenomenal year and does the best of all the stocks, it's not going to really move the needle that much. Compared to NVIDIA, if NVIDIA has a wonderful year, which it has the past 4 years, it's going to drive the S&P 500 up more. So having something that is market cap weighted, especially when the large companies are making the most money, does great for your portfolio. But one bad thing about performance and market cap weighted is, what if the flip happens? What if NVIDIA goes down dramatically? And NVIDIA is our largest weight at 7.2%. Or Apple, which is the second largest weight at 6.5%, go down dramatically. That means that basically 14% of your money, your two largest holdings, is going to drive the price down. That's why in 2020, you had a lot of stocks that didn't lose as much, but the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ went crumbling down because the biggest of the biggest lost the most. That's why during this AI boom the past 3 years, the largest companies, because they're investing in AI and they're using it, they're making the most money. NVIDIA making the most money, so the S&P 500 is rewarded. Apple, rewarded. Microsoft, rewarded. Google, rewarded. Amazon, rewarded. So as these large companies grow, the S&P 500 is going to grow even more because it's market cap. Now, if you want something that's more equal, because you can have your money go down if those large companies go down being market cap, then you want to look at something like QQQE. Not a recommendation, just information. Because QQQE is an index fund, but it's not market capped. It just takes the same amount of every investment. So it's not picking the winners and losers. It does not care about what something has done in the past. It's about what is present. So using Domino's Pizza as example. So when it's market cap, that means Domino's is only 0.2% of 100,000, which is $200, while NVIDIA is 7.2%, which is 7,000. If something is equally weighted and it's 500 stocks in the S&P 500, well, that's a little bit different because now my 100,000, everything starts at $200. So everything is $200. Doesn't matter if it's Google, NVIDIA, Microsoft, News Corp, Domino's Pizza, Netflix. It doesn't matter what company it is. They're all at $200 because it's equally capped. So when the market is going down and it's tanking, since things are equally capped, those equally capped investments like QQQE typically don't go down as much. Just food for thought. Again, not a recommendation, just information. And the third thing you want to think about is the best performers inside that ETF. And this is why I think we do so good for our clients, because ETFs are great investments. And historically, index funds beat the market. But individuals, they want a little bit of beta, right? Because you guys, you want some more alpha, right? So we invest in terms, we have alpha, we have beta. But for this example, we're just going to talk about alpha. And alpha measures the stock's excess performance compared to its benchmark. Okay. So it's meaning, can I perform better than the actual benchmark, which is the index? So all investors, they want alpha. They want to have investments like the stock market, but they want to outperform the stock market. Where we come in is that we like to, quote unquote, cherry pick the stocks that we think are undervalued inside those indexes. Case in point, a few years ago, no one was talking about Micron, but Micron slowly but surely had a lot of back orders because they do the memory for AI chips. And we know, just like a brain, in order for AI to work, it needs to have memory, right? If I put my hand on the stove, it got burnt the first time. But now my memory tells me never to put my hand on the stove again. It's like the large language models when it comes to AI. They work, but instead of them repeating themselves, they need memory to keep things up. And Micron and SanDisk are those two companies that do the most memory chips for AI. As we saw that go to fruition, guess what we said? Let's buy a little bit of Micron for our clients. It worked out. Peloton. Peloton is tech in defense and won. We bought Peloton at $13. Now it went down to $6 a share, and clients was not happy with that 50% drop. Now today, Peloton is over $100 a share. So picking a small amount of money, picking the ones inside those index funds that we think are undervalued, that's going to grow, that goes a long way in alpha. That allows you to be having most of your money, not all, but most of your money in index funds, but then having pieces here or there and single stocks that might outperform. Number 4, and the last thing, from a bonus standpoint, they also have sector index funds. Okay. Sector index funds are, again, a pool of investments tied to an index on a sector. So the S&P 500, 39% of all the stocks are in the tech sector. So if you want to niche down and say, since it's 39%, I want to have my own exchange traded fund, my own index fund, just in the tech sector alone, you can do that. A symbol like XLK, not a recommendation, just information, that only invests in technology companies. So now you're able to get the companies that's in that index, in that S&P 500, in the NASDAQ 100, but all by itself. So you can actually have index funds that's tied to a sector, and that's what we call sector ETFs. They're not managed. They're passive. They're not active where it's buys and sells going on, but it's a way for you to niche down. And by you niching down, if you get it right, you, my friends, are a happy camper. For our clients, early this year, we niched down in memory stocks, and we bought symbol DRAM because it only picks the stocks that are memory chip stocks. SanDisk, Micron, the memory chips that I talked about. So we're not picking the winners or losers, but we're picking that sector, and that has grown dramatically up over 100% for the year. Past performance does not guarantee future results. And all the ETFs I'm talking about is from a reference standpoint, because I'm a fiduciary and we manage money, but our clients' money. But the cool thing about management, though, is that we do things a little bit different than anybody else. Most financial advisors, they want to have you have them. They want to invest their money. It's called assets under management. We do things a little bit different. Since I'm a certified financial planner, we do things from an advisory standpoint. We call it assets under advisory, meaning keep your money at your brokerage firm. Keep your money with Charles Schwab if you want to. Keep your money with Fidelity. Keep it in your 401k. We are just here to advise you on what to do, and then you can take control of your investments. And also, since our goal is to have all of our clients make at least $150,000 in 1 year passively, making money outside of their stocks, outside of their 9-to-5 job with passive income type investments, we do whatever we can to see if you can hit that goal of $150,000 a year passively. Just imagine you're at your job making $100,000 a year. And then you have passive income investments that are paying you $150,000 a year. That's a lot of stocks that you can buy with your passive income. And your active income is used to pay off bills and pay off debt. We're winning two ways, y'all. But story for another day. But if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share it to our channel. And put in the comment section, is this valuable information or is this information one-on-one? If you want me to get deeper into the ETS, deeper into active versus passive, talk about my experience, because as you know, me and my business partner, we launched symbol LETB. I actually launched an ETF on the stock market in 2022. So I can tell you about my experience and how that went. But as always, let's make some painful profits together, y'all. Peace.